So I'm going to talk today briefly about the difficulty of cultural ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are the services that are provided by functioning systems of nature, not just the commodities that we get from nature, such as bananas and lumber, building materials, and fish, but these are the services, the circumstances that are essential for human survival and well-being, the processes in nature that produce clean water and breathable air and the availability of food and so on. Nature sustains these services without regard for our participation, but they are essential for our survival. If the ecosystem ceases producing clean water or breathable air or pollinating plants, we will have to replace these things. We will have to find substitutes because we cannot live without them. So from the ecosystem services perspective, from looking at nature in this way, we can formulate a way of valuing nature that goes beyond commodity-based value that has dominated the way we looked at nature in the past. Ecosystem services literature has been growing over about 20 years as researchers have found more and more important services that are eliminated when we displace nature and replace it with a built environment through cutting and cultivation. One of the more complicated and less developed areas of ecosystem services is cultural services. So this term, cultural ecosystem services, refers to the intangible, sometimes spiritual, emotional, psychological, or other types of attachments that we make with nature. These can be personal and they can be community-based. Examples are found in our cultural practices, in religious icons, in special landscapes, protected trees, swimming holes, educational opportunities, scientific research in nature, things that provide a sense of place and a sense of identity fall into this area of intangible services, the cultural services. Now, as we get into cultural services, what we're doing is identifying the special places, the special attachments that provide these benefits of a spiritual cultural nature. This type of service has been very complicated to value because it's less tangible benefits involved, but also because it involves services that have, say, less precise benefits that might be only indirectly appreciated in psychological, emotional, physical ways and are rarely reflected in economic indicators. But they are certainly real and they are certainly essential and important. One example that is very recent is the Pacific Islanders being displaced from their homes as we experience sea level rise. We have to realize that not just any land will do for replacing their cultural and spiritual attachments to the land. Displacement is problematic in that case. So how do we go through the process of imagining the loss of cultural services, or in other words, how do we value cultural ecosystem services? We need to identify and assess the way we connect to local environments, and it is local. Right? This is a difficult area to research because of the very parochial nature of special places, and it may be very difficult to understand them objectively to really get to the value of these places. But it is doable. Right? We need to take into account these special places and identify the functions that give some substance to spiritual and cultural practices. The reason that the loss of these particular functions can be so devastating as a cultural matter. As we approach the challenges to cultural-based services, we have to remember that cultural services are very place-based. From afar, we can try to understand the relevance of particular ecological features and the reasons for connections to community and individual well-being, but cultural services are place-based and they have to be appreciated as such. UNESCO reminded us not too long ago, just a few short decades that when we look at globalization, we cannot ignore the risks, including the risk of forgetting the unique character of individual human beings. It's for them to choose their own future and to achieve their full potential within the carefully tended wealth of their traditions and their own cultures, which, unless we are careful, can be endangered by contemporary developments. Thank you.